So today we're going to be talking about something pretty heavy, a really difficult part of 20th century history.
Yeah, we're looking at the Holodomor.
And if you haven't heard that word before, it's Ukrainian. It translates to death by hunger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It refers to this devastating famine that swept through Ukraine between 1932 and 1933 when it was part of the Soviet Union.
And I think the most important thing to get right from the very start is that this wasn't a natural disaster.
No, not at all. There wasn't some huge drought or a flood. This famine was, it was created.
Created by government decisions.
Yes, intentionally. The policies of the Soviet government under Joseph Stalin directly caused millions of people to starve, even while food was available.
Okay, so let's get into how this happened. It all starts with this one big idea, this massive government plan called collectivization.
Right. And it was a huge, huge change. For centuries, Ukrainian life was based on families owning and working their own small farms.
That was just how it was.
Exactly. And Stalin's government came in and said, nope, we're taking all of it.
All of it.
All of it. The land, the animals, the tools, everything was going to be combined into these massive state-run farms called collective farms.
So you're essentially just abolishing private property for farmers overnight.
That's it. Now, the official goal was modernization. The leaders claimed these huge farms using big tractors and machinery would be way more efficient.
Okay, so the idea was to grow more food.
To grow more food for the factory workers in the cities and, this is key, to sell the grain overseas to make money to build up Soviet industry.
But the whole plan failed spectacularly. Why?
Well, first, it was incredibly brutal and fast. They forced farmers onto these farms, sometimes at gunpoint. And second, the management was terrible.
What do you mean?
They put party officials in charge, people who had maybe worked in a factory but had zero experience with farming.
And if you take away a farmer's motivation, his own land.
You've got it. Why work hard if the government is just going to take everything you produce? People lost the will to care for the land. Tools went missing. Seeds weren't planted right. It led to a huge drop in how much food was actually being grown.
And that's where the government's reaction turns this from a bad policy into something terrifying. Ukrainian farmers were known for being really independent.
They were, and they resisted. They didn't want to give up their land and their way of life.
And the government had a name for these people, didn't they?
They did. They labeled them kulaks. It was a really negative term, basically meaning a class enemy or a rich, greedy peasant.
But you didn't have to be rich to be a kulak.
Not at all. If you just had one extra cow or were a slightly better farmer than your neighbor, you could be branded a kulak. It was a label used to create an enemy.
So how did these farmers resist?
It was desperate. Rather than hand over their animals to the state, many farmers slaughtered their own livestock, their horses, their pigs, everything.
Wow, they'd rather destroy their own livelihood than give it to the government.
It was a heartbreaking act of protest. But the government didn't see it as protest. They saw it as sabotage,
A threat to their plan.
a threat to Stalin's control. And that gave them the excuse they needed to launch a campaign they called dekulakization,
Which is basically...
the elimination of the kulaks as a class. They arrested thousands upon thousands of families, men, women, children.
And what happened to them?
They were forced onto trains and shipped thousands of miles away to Siberia and other remote places. Most had nothing but the clothes they were wearing. Many didn't survive the journey.
And with all these experienced farmers gone, the harvest must have gotten even worse.
Of course. But the state's demands didn't change. They set these impossibly high grain quotas. They demanded farms hand over amounts of grain that they didn't have.
So the government's plan failed, and their response was to just demand more.
Exactly. They had to give up every single kernel, leaving absolutely nothing for the people who actually grew it.
Okay, let's talk about the specific tools they used to enforce this, because this is where it becomes a deliberate strategy of starvation.
It is. They sent out special government brigades. These groups went from house to house, searching for any food that people might have hidden away.
And they were thorough, from what I understand.
Incredibly thorough. And cruel. They had these long metal rods they'd use to poke into the ground in people's yards, or even into the walls of their houses, looking for buried sacks of grain.
And they took more than just grain.
They took everything. Potatoes, flour, beans, any food they found. And what's truly devastating is they took the seed grain.
The seeds saved for the next planting season.
Yes. By taking that, you're not just creating a famine for this year, you're guaranteeing one for next year, too.
There was even a law about this, right?
There was a law that basically said all food belonged to the state. People called it the five-stock law. If you were caught keeping even a handful of grain for your family, you could be arrested, imprisoned, or even executed.
They made it a crime to try to survive.
Pretty much. But it got even more systematic. They used a tactic called blacklisting.
What did that mean?
If a village didn't meet its impossible grain quota, the whole village was put on a blacklist. It was a collective punishment.
And what happened to a blacklisted village?
It was essentially a death sentence. All the shops were closed. No goods of any kind, no food, no matches, no fuel were allowed in or out.
So they just cut them off completely.
And they would often surround the village with troops to make sure no one could leave. It turned the entire area into a prison camp.
They were actively trapping people in the hunger zones.
Yes. They closed the borders of the Ukrainian Republic itself. They set up checkpoints on roads and at train stations to catch anyone trying to escape to the cities or to other regions to find food.
So you couldn't stay, and you couldn't leave.
You were trapped. It was this total control that ensured the death toll would be so incredibly high.
Which brings us to the human cost. What was it actually like in these villages?
It was horrific. People ate anything to survive. Grass, tree bark, leaves. They boiled leather from their shoes.
The social structure must have just completely collapsed.
It did. Dogs and cats disappeared from the streets. They became a source of food. Schools closed because kids were too weak to attend. People would just collapse and die in their homes or on the road. So many children became orphans.
And the scale of this, the numbers are just staggering.
They are. It's difficult to get an exact count because the government tried to cover it up, but historians estimate that somewhere between 3.5 million and 7 million people died.
In just over a year.
In just over a year, entire villages were just wiped out, gone.
How did the government manage to hide something on that scale?
Through relentless propaganda. While millions were starving, the state media was publishing articles about the amazing success of the collective farms.
And posters, right. I've seen them. Happy, healthy-looking farmers with baskets overflowing with food.
Exactly. It was a complete fiction, and if anyone tried to speak the truth, a doctor, a local official, they'd be arrested as a traitor or a spy. They enforced total silence.
What about the rest of the world? Did anyone know what was going on?
The Soviet government denied everything. They told the world the harvest was a great success. They even invited some foreign journalists on these carefully staged tours.
Showed them a fake reality.
A complete fake. They'd take them to a model collective farm where everyone was well fed for the day. And sadly, many reporters either believed it or just went along with it to maintain good relations with Stalin.
But not all of them.
Not all of them. There's a brave Welsh journalist, a young guy named Gareth Jones. He figured out it was a lie, snuck away from his official guides, and walked through the famine regions himself.
And he saw it firsthand.
He saw the starvation, the bodies. He came back and reported the truth. But tragically, he was publicly discredited by more famous journalists in Moscow. The world, for the most part, didn't listen.
So after the famine ended, what was the long-term impact on Ukraine?
The cultural damage was immense. The heart of traditional Ukrainian culture, the peasantry, was shattered. And then the Soviet government moved people from other parts of the Soviet Union into the empty villages.
Changing the entire demographic of the region.
Exactly. And for decades, survivors were forbidden to even speak about the Holodomor. It was a forbidden history, a trauma that was forced underground for generations.
But that silence has been broken now. And today, the Holodomor is recognized by a very specific and powerful term.
That's right. Many countries, including the United States and Canada, now officially recognize it as an act of genocide.
Let's just be very clear about what that means.
It means that this wasn't just a famine that happened because of a bad policy. It's the belief that hunger was used as a deliberate weapon to crush the Ukrainian people's identity and their desire for independence.
When you look at the evidence, closing the borders, taking the seed grain, blacklisting whole villages, it points to something far more calculated than just mismanagement.
It does. It points to an intentional effort to destroy a group of people. The Holodomor is just a brutal reminder of how government control over food and information can lead to almost unimaginable suffering.
It's a story of tragedy, but also of the importance of truth and the resilience of people determined to have their history told.
Keep learning. Keep asking questions. It's how we make sure these things are never forgotten.
See you next time.